The G20 is the premier forum for international economic cooperation. It brings together the leaders of the world's largest economies to discuss and address global economic challenges. The G20 has a significant impact on the global economy, and it is a valuable opportunity for countries to come together and find common ground. The G20 was founded in 1999, and it has evolved over time to become the most important forum for international economic cooperation. The G20 Summit is held annually, and it is hosted by a different country each year. The current chair of the G20 is India. The G20 Summit is a major event, and it is attended by the leaders of the G20 member countries, as well as representatives from other countries and international organizations. The main agenda items of the G20 Summit are the global economic recovery, the stability of the global financial system, climate change and sustainable development, food security, digital transformation, and countering terrorism and violent extremism. The G20 Summit is an important opportunity for the world's major economies to come together and discuss how to address the challenges facing the global community. The agreements and commitments made at the summit can have a ripple effect on businesses, consumers, and governments around the world. In the next few minutes, I will talk about the key issues that were discussed at the G20 Summit 2023, the agreements and commitments that were made, the divisions within the G20, and my opinion on the summit. The G20 Summit 2023 was held in New Delhi, India, on September 9–10, 2023. The theme of the summit was, One Earth, One Family, One Future. The summit was attended by the leaders of the G20 member countries, as well as representatives from other countries and international organizations. The summit resulted in a number of agreements and commitments, including a commitment to continue working together to promote the global economic recovery, a commitment to strengthen the global financial system, a commitment to take urgent action to address climate change, a commitment to ensure food security for all, a commitment to promote digital transformation for inclusive growth, a commitment to combat terrorism and violent extremism. The summit was generally seen as a success, with leaders from both developed and developing countries agreeing on the need to work together to address the major challenges facing the world. However, the summit was also marked by some disagreements, particularly on the issue of climate change. Now we analyze of the G20 Summit 2023. The global economic recovery is still fragile. The global economy is still recovering from the COVID-19 pandemic, and there are risks of further setbacks. The war in Ukraine is also having a negative impact on the global economy. The G20 leaders agreed to continue working together to promote the global economic recovery, but they acknowledged that there is still a long way to go. The war in Ukraine is a major challenge. The war in Ukraine is a major challenge for the G20. The leaders condemned the war and called for a peaceful resolution. However, they were unable to agree on a joint statement on the war. This is a sign of the deep divisions within the G20 on this issue. Climate change is a major threat. Climate change is a major threat to the global economy and to the planet. The G20 leaders acknowledged the urgency of taking action on climate change, but they were unable to agree on a binding commitment to reduce emissions. This is a major disappointment, and it is a sign that the G20 is not yet taking climate change seriously enough. Food security is a growing concern. Food security is a growing concern, as the war in Ukraine is disrupting global food markets. The G20 leaders agreed to take steps to address food security, but they did not provide any specific commitments. This is a missed opportunity, and it is likely that food security will become an even more pressing issue in the future. Digital transformation is an opportunity and a challenge. Digital transformation is an opportunity to boost economic growth and improve people's lives. However, it also poses challenges, such as the risk of inequality and exclusion. The G20 leaders agreed to promote digital transformation for inclusive growth, but they did not provide any specific commitments. This is a missed opportunity, and it is important for the G20 to do more to address the challenges of digital transformation. Terrorism and violent extremism remain a threat. Terrorism and violent extremism remain a threat to global security. The G20 leaders agreed to combat terrorism and violent extremism, but they did not provide any specific commitments. This is a missed opportunity, and it is important for the G20 to do more to address this threat. Was this summit divided one? Yes, the G20 Summit 2023 was a divided one. The leaders were unable to agree on a number of key issues, including climate change, food security, and the war in Ukraine. This was due to the deep divisions within the G20 on these issues. On the issue of climate change, the United States and other developed countries wanted to see a binding commitment to reduce emissions. However, China and other developing countries argued that this would be unfair to them, as they are still developing their economies. As a result, the G20 was unable to agree on a binding commitment to reduce emissions. On the issue of food security, the leaders agreed that food security is a growing concern. However, they were unable to agree on specific measures to address this concern. This is a missed opportunity, as food security is likely to become an even more pressing issue in the future. On the issue of the war in Ukraine, the leaders condemned the war and called for a peaceful resolution. However, they were unable to agree on a joint statement on the war. This is a sign of the deep divisions within the G20 on this issue. The divisions within the G20 make it difficult for the forum to be effective in addressing the major challenges facing the world. The G20 needs to find ways to bridge these divisions if it wants to be a more effective force for good in the world. Furthermore, following countries' leaders did not attend the G20 Summit 2023. Russia. Russian President Vladimir Putin was not invited to the summit due to the ongoing war in Ukraine. China. Chinese President Xi Jinping did not attend the summit in person, but he sent a video message. Mexico. Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador did not attend the summit, citing disagreements with the G20 on the issue of climate change. The absence of these leaders was a sign of the divisions within the G20. The absence of Russia's President Putin was particularly significant, as it was the first time that a G20 summit had been held without the participation of a major power. The absence of these leaders also made it difficult for the G20 to be effective in addressing the major challenges facing the world. The G20 needs the participation of all of its members in order to be effective. Overall, the G20 Summit 2023 was a mixed bag. The leaders agreed on a number of important issues, but they were also unable to agree on some key issues, such as climate change. The G20 needs to do more to address the major challenges facing the world, and it needs to do so in a more coordinated and effective manner. Here are some recommendations for the G20 going forward. The G20 should focus on the most pressing challenges facing the world, such as climate change, food security, and digital transformation. The G20 should make more specific commitments to address these challenges. The G20 should be more inclusive, and it should involve more countries in the decision-making process. The G20 should be more transparent, and it should be more accountable to the public. The G20 is a valuable forum for international cooperation, but it needs to be more effective in addressing the major challenges facing the world. By following these recommendations, the G20 can become a more effective force for good in the world. Despite the divisions, the G20 summit was a valuable opportunity for the world's major economies to come together and discuss the challenges facing the world. The leaders made some progress on a number of issues, and they agreed to continue working together to address these challenges.